Hello. Well, the first thing I'd like to ask for is, can we have water for each of us up here? That would be really nice. It's a beautiful day. I really appreciate all of you coming out. I see a lot of friendly faces. Two of my neighbors came a long way from Chico and another set from Reno. Appreciate you being here. So I'm supposed to tell you something about myself and what I think, what my experiences are, and what I think I can do for the Sea Ranch. So I'm going to get started. The first thing I always want to know about people, so I thought I would share it with you, is just how old are they? Well, I'm 62. And I remember coming to meetings, board meetings, and sitting in the back and having brown hair and looking at everybody in the front that had white hair. And I would go, why am I here? Well, now I'm one of them that has the white hair. My husband's Tom. He's in the audience. We've been married for 35 years. We have 3 grown children, 2 grandchildren. My grandson Matt lives with us and goes to college. And we're guardians of 2 large dogs. Now, the dogs have been an interesting issue. When I've gone to my coffees, people don't know who Jody Sparks is because we're still part-timers and we go back and forth. But they know that really tall woman that walks that really big black dog and that really big white dog. But I didn't think it would be very good to campaign on that. We first drove through Sea Ranch in 1969. And in 1969, it was wild and unruly, and it still is. We were able to buy our house here in 1995. I never thought we would be able to do that with putting 3 kids through college, but you know, we have been part-time, and we've probably passed many of you on Highway 1 at 9 o'clock, commuting back and forth. It's usually a set of us that are doing that. Backing up a little bit, being a mother with 3 children, I was a reentry student at UC Davis, graduated, joined a law firm that was involved in litigation, joined an environmental consulting firm, and worked my way up, bought the partners out, and ran it for 25 years. In December of this last year, I dissolved the company and retired. And now I've decided to run for the board. In my work, I focused on environmental issues, and they included water, solid hazardous waste, wastewater. We did litigation support, due diligence work, environmental impact reports, and all along we had to work with all of the state, local, and federal agencies that were involved in that. In almost every instance, these are very contentious subjects, and you have people with very, very different opinions. And you can't ever get anything done unless you can find a kernel that you all agree to and that you can move forward on. I've been involved in Sea Ranch activities all along since 1995. Of course, if you're a part-time person, you can't get involved as much as sometimes you want to. And then in other instances, when you're a part-time person, the last thing you want to do is get involved in anything because you want to escape it. But now that I've retired, I've decided that I'm going to join the fray and participate in a larger way and try to communicate and try to participate and contribute in our community. All of us here today share many, many common concerns. We just come at them perhaps a little bit differently. We know that we need to safeguard our water supply, and that's something that all of us have recently been involved in. We need to maintain the value of our property. All of these things actually all fit together. You can't have one without the other. We need to ensure that we're using our money very, very wisely, especially in these economic times. We need to, at the same time, maintain our amenities and our services and do it in a cost-effective manner, because all of these have to do with the value of our property. Like I say, you can't do one without the other. And we need to maintain and strengthen our fuel management program. The board will face these and other important issues this coming year. And I believe, because of my historical work for 25 years in Sacramento, and being a participant as much as I was and have been at Sea Ranch, I think I've probably attended 25 to 30 board meetings and the like over the years since '95. I believe that I have the professional expertise on critical issues such as water that I can help the board with. And I believe that my extensive experience in dealing with contentious issues and being able to find common ground is something that is essential if we are going to move forward as a board and get some work done on important things. I look forward to your support. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Does that work? Well, good. I'm delighted to be here today to talk with all of you. The board election we're about to conduct is, in fact, a critical one. As most of you know, I've served as treasurer for the association and for the water company for the past 2 years of my 3-year term, a role that fits my many, many years of professional finance and investment experience. I want to talk first about the past 3 years. They served as my introduction to board service and have been, to say the least, very challenging. We've worked through one of the worst economic downturns in recent history. We lost our community manager. We installed an interim community manager who did a wonderful job for us. We worked through significant board governance issues. We hired Frank Bell as our full-time community manager. We delivered a 2009-10 budget that kept our assessment flat to the previous year, reversing a trend of many years. We delivered with great difficulty a 2010-11 budget that kept operating expense increases to 2.1%, resulting in an operating assessment of $183.75 per month. We've struggled with 2 key issues requiring legal action: our water rights and a violation of our restrictions. These have added substantial but temporary legal expenses, resulting in an overall assessment of $197.25. Because your finance committee and your board decided 2 years ago to make a definitive effort to reduce our assessment increases, association staff under the leadership of the past 2 managers has substantially tightened our operating expenses, reducing staffing to 2004 levels. With the exception of litigation expense, our assessment has increased just over 1% annually since that board decision. All of this has been achieved with minimal impact to member services. Our staff deserves our appreciation for the extraordinary work they've done and continue to do toward providing the service we enjoy at this reasonable cost. 2 years ago, payroll was 65% of our budget. Last year, it was 58%. And this year, it will only be 54% of the total budget. To those who claim that our expenses are out of control and our assessment increases are unacceptable, please look at these facts. Together with staff and the work of the Finance Committee, we've done an exceptional job of holding down costs, and we continue to work on reducing them even further. The most critical issue to face us in the near future is the water company and its badly needed improvements. Our water delivery system is non-compliant with state regulations. There's real concern that if there were a serious fire on the ridge, there would not be adequate pressure and flow to fight it. No one is arguing that we can ignore the demands of the Department of Health any longer. The concern is the cost, around $10 million, and how to pay for it. This year we're finally able to begin the work. Our 2009 application for a general rate increase has been successfully completed. We've been able to apply for some of that increase. We've been able to apply some of that increase to the capital improvement plan, and we're moving ahead with the replacement of our 40-year-old meters with electronic meters, saving lots of time and money in the future. The total bill for this improvement is about $250,000, but we each have to pay only about $2.60 a month for the next 3 years. Now, no one wants to pay more than they absolutely have to, but $2.60 per month is relatively painless. My primary purpose in running for re-election is for the opportunity to see the funding of this major demand to its conclusion. Funding for the water meter project took some creative thinking. That's what I do for a living, and that's what I can do for you. For me, serving as a Sea Ranch Association board member means much more than just effectively performing the duties of board treasurer. It means representing the entire membership's interests as we determine the future course our association will take. We're obligated by law and by good practice to operate with complete transparency as a board. Over the past year, this hasn't always happened. I'm personally dedicated to ensuring that we follow the principles of ethical governance as well as the law. It also means that anyone serving on the board must be very clear on their vision for the Sea Ranch as we develop budgets and plans for the future. Here are my commitments to every member of the association. We must maintain those services that make the Sea Ranch the community that we love, but we must do so at the lowest practical expense. We must recognize that these services affect our real estate values as well as the quality of our Sea Ranch experience. We must continue to improve our operational efficiency. Our staff has made remarkable progress on this over the past 2 years. Actually, our staff is a major asset for all of the Sea Ranch Association membership. We need to value and support them. It is emphatically not the role of the board to micromanage the community manager and or his staff. We must continue to take full advantage of the extraordinary volunteer support we get from our members every day. I've worked closely with the Finance Committee and somewhat closely with the Utilities Committee, and they are a major asset to the Sea Ranch, as are all of our volunteers. I want to finish by looking to the future. The Sea Ranch periodically goes through periods of fractious debates on and off the board. We are in one of those periods right now. We face major challenges both for the association and for the water company. We're welcoming a new and highly qualified community manager. He deserves time and the support of the board and the community as he starts his new assignment. Experience and continuity of leadership are critical to finding the right path to the future. We have to satisfy both full-time and part-time residents. Attempts to divide us on this or many other issues is counterproductive. I love the Sea Ranch. That's why Margie and I moved here full-time in 2003. I want to continue to work with all of you to keep the Sea Ranch experience as wonderful as it is. We've made major progress in reducing our assessment increases and managing our operating expenses, while maintaining the amenities, the service, and the principles which make our community unique. I ask for your vote in this board election so we can maintain this momentum.
Good afternoon. I'm Donna, and I want to welcome all of you. I'm very grateful that you've come to hear the presentations of all three of the candidates. And I'd like to offer a big thank you to my husband, who's been so supportive, Steve. We've all been drawn here by our love for the Sea Ranch, and we all mean well, and we want the best for this magnificent place. We all share that in common. But we also know there are some difficulties, and it's helpful to acknowledge them, and that we can really be effective in, I'm going to need my reading glasses, sorry. But we all face some difficulties, and it's helpful to acknowledge them so we can really be effective in finding solutions. The way I see it, the Sea Ranch is mismanaged, and we need to fix it. There has been a lot of infighting, and we need to get over it. We have some real problems, and we need to pull together to find solutions. And that's why I'm running for the board. We are facing significant issues as a community, and I'm committed to solving our problems, not just talking about them. The most urgent priorities I see right now are budget, water, fire, views, legal, and design committee. On budget, it's not reasonable to raise dues 10% in the midst of this terrible economy. I'll urge lower dues and budget reform. We need to prepare our budgets from the top down, with the board leading and the staff responding. Instead, we've been building the budget from the bottom up based on staff requests. That tends to grow the bureaucracy. On water, the latest fiasco with our water rights demonstrates clearly that we need to reform the governance and management of the water company. We need to make more use of the remarkable expertise on our Utilities Committee. And we need to move forward to bring the capital improvement plan to readiness. On fire, despite our hard work for fire safety, our excessive fuel load continues to grow and presents a real fire danger. Our association must fulfill its duty to maintain the commons in a safe condition and remove the dead trees which could fuel a firestorm. On views, we need to restore our lost views. The open landscape and sweeping ocean vistas that used to be seen from almost everywhere on the ranch are gone. The resulting decline in our enjoyment, safety, and property values is not what our founders envisioned. The board needs to protect property values. On legal, we've created unnecessary dependence on lawyers, which has hijacked our budget and driven up our dues. We need to properly manage our legal affairs with close supervision. And we need to find better alternatives than suing our own members. On the design committee, we need to end the secrecy and inconsistency. We need to uphold the safeguards of our CC&Rs. We need an attitude of helpfulness from the design department when owners are earnestly seeking to resolve problems. To make real progress on these issues, we need what I have to offer. Deep experience serving on a homeowners association board for 27 years. That's more than a quarter of a century of experience and success. Although our other association is small, only 28 homes, the same rules apply. All California homeowner associations must follow the Davis-Sterling Act, no matter the size of the community. I have a clear understanding of how beneficial change is really achieved. I have old-fashioned common sense. I'm confident that I can be a positive benefit to the board because I'm independent, not beholden to anyone or any group. My specialty is problem solving. I bring people together to solve problems peacefully. For me, there is no denial, no spin, no axe to grind. What I do is research the options, work to build a consensus, and persevere to get results. I'm fiscally conservative with a business mindset, and I'll take an active fiduciary role. I can't be snowed because I've used the Davis-Sterling Act since its beginning in 1986, and I really understand it. And I know our CC&Rs and staunchly uphold them. I honor our original values of living simply, in harmony with nature, and good stewardship of the land. I'm not in this for ego. I don't do ego. I'm a hard-working person who gets along with people and holds to professional standards. I know that I can handle whatever comes at us. I'm well seasoned in fighting unforeseen problems. I did it before when our Berkeley Hills community was destroyed. It was in the firestorm in 1991. On that board, we had to deal with losing all of our homes and all that we owned. And 25 people died in the fire. When you lose so many neighbors so tragically, you never forget the value of each one. I'll never forget the value of each of you. Every Sea Rancher matters to me. I would be honored to represent you on our board.
All right, very good. We're moving right along. Now we're ready to start the Q&A. Let's see, do we have the volunteers in our position here?
Where are the mics?
Now, just as a reminder, what we're going to do, which you'll see on the wall, is a 2-minute timer, and it will count. That applies to the question. It's going to apply to the response up here. And if there are other questions related, we'll do it. Okay, now do we have our volunteers in the ready position here?
Okay.
All right. So let's start right over here. We'll start with Dick first. And ask for the next person to have a volunteer, get them lined up, the microphone ready to go. So if I'd like you to introduce yourself, tell your lot and your unit and your lot number, and then proceed with your question.
My name is Barry Richmond, and my numbers are 1879. I'd like to ask each of the board, or the prospective board members, exactly what kind of cost cutting you would like to see in the future. What specific services, what specific parts of the budget do you think needs cut?
Okay, so each of us is going to respond, and why don't we start this first time round with Kim? And
Barry, the microphone might have been a problem. I didn't quite understand your question. I heard cross-cutting, but I don't think we're talking about... Oh, cost-cutting.
Yeah, Tim, if you or any of the other candidates,
If you or any of the other candidates feel that costs should be cut, I'd like to know in what specific areas you think they should be cut.
Well, it's a great question. We have a new community manager who has determined to reform and refine the whole budget process. One of the ways that I would like to see costs cut is to release some of the repetitive work that the staff has to do just to answer questions about the budget. We've worked very hard, and over the last couple of years have significantly cut the cost of staff. I'm not sure how much more we want to actually cut that. But I do want to see them be relieved of unnecessary responsibilities so that they can fulfill their function and therefore, and thereby I should say, save money for us. Other than that, we're looking still at proposals that have been brought up in the last 2 budget cycles, and we're trying to see which ones of those might not only be implemented for cost cutting, but for revenue enhancement as well. Now, some of them were kind of silly. You know, do we want to put vending machines all over the Delmar Center and so forth? And the finance committee and the board kind of quickly said, no, we really don't want to do that. So that one just got passed over. On the other hand, do we want to work hard toward an electronic system of publications? And we have started encouraging, and boy, one of the things that we could all do to save cost is to use the electronic transfer system for dues. So there are things and areas that we're still exploring for them. Thank you.
Okay, Jody?
Am I supposed to?
You want to use this one? Use this one. Here, it's open.
No?
Here, Jody. This one works.
Okay. As far as cost cutting, I think we're pretty bare bones. I think there are some things that might be done relative to our allocation of staff resources. One thing that I've noted, and I may stand to be corrected by staff on this, but this is my experience in going out to attending all the committee meetings, you know, to sort of prep oneself. I notice sometimes, and there may be a good reason, but I haven't asked them, that sometimes I'll go to a committee meeting and there'll be like 2 or 3 staff people there. And the committee meeting lasts for like 2 or 3 hours, and so I wonder if perhaps if the chairs of the committees were able to have their agendas out a little bit earlier, then maybe staff could use those resources a little bit better. And if someone has a presentation, they could be there for their 5 minutes and then they could go do something else. I say this only because it's been kind of frustrating to not get the agendas ahead of time. And I can understand where a staff person would have to be there if they didn't know when they were going to have to make their presentation. Now, that's not going to reduce the budget, but it is going to reduce hiring new staff to do things. The other thing is, I'm just going to mention it now, and that is that I believe that we can use in-house staff, and perhaps some of those staff, to better monitor regulations and policies that are out there so that we're not caught in a surprise in the future. It's relatively easy to do on the computer, so there will not be need to hire someone to do that kind of work.
Okay, thank you. Donna?
Here, just take this.
Hold it near your mouth.
Near my mouth? This is okay? The board sets the policy, and the community manager carries out the policy. I would like the board to review with our new community manager areas where we can reduce the budget. At this point, I cannot give you one specific item, except I can tell you that our litigation expenses are very, very high, and that we should be using our wonderful utilities committee members to advise the board on important decisions. Certainly the bulletin should be electronic, like the board agenda, available to be picked up in the office at $1 a copy, or mailed to people like they mail the agenda at $3 a copy.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next question. And let's be sure we have the next question lined up here. Go ahead.
It's Tony Green, 35 East 17. I have one question, and I'd like a response from all the members of all the candidates. I think we can all agree that the association is served very well by all the volunteer committees that we have. And I'd like to suggest one additional committee, and that would be a legal advisory committee consisting of legal professionals. I would like to know if each of the candidates would support such a committee, establishment of such a committee, and if so, how?
Okay, Jody, would you like to lead us off, and then we'll go down and Jim?
Well, this idea came up in one of the question and answer sessions on Wednesday, on one of the Wednesday meetings, the town hall meetings. And I think there are some positive things about it. The negative thing about it is that not all attorneys have expertise in the issues that we have, so we would have to be careful on that. But it's certainly something that we can investigate and look at. I would not do a thumbs down on it. I would want to look more at it.
Okay.
I'm in favor of forming such a committee. I think we have many lawyers and judges living at Sea Ranch. Obviously, for litigation, we would want litigation specialists. We have water rights attorneys living at Sea Ranch. They would comprise another segment of that advisory committee. We have people who know the erosion, and we're still working with the county on erosion problems. So I see that as a very vital committee. I think it may have eliminated several of the lawsuits that we've been involved with, which have cost us all dearly.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not only completely in favor of such a committee, I actually have solicited a number of names that could sit on it. And this would be an operational committee. So the way that it would be formed, Tony, is that it would be drawn up by the community manager. I don't see it actually, while it would be a very useful committee to the board, I don't see it actually as a policy committee as such, but one that would be somewhat ad hoc, situation to situation. Certainly in regard to the current litigation that we are in with a community member, we would have been far better off if we'd had some of the litigators that are eager to help to advise us early on this situation. I think we could save an exceptional amount of money, and that is just a great idea.
Okay, good, thank you. Who's ready to go? Okay.
Hi, Pat Romero, UBL 1018, just for the record. And I want to thank all three of you for being candidates, especially in these times. Thank you. You all touched somewhat on what I feel is a very major issue, and my question is what specific qualifications do any of you bring to the table to be able to address the issue that we currently face with the water company?
Okay, Donna, do you want to lead us off? And then
Well, I've served on a board for 27 years, and I'm familiar with working with people and resolving issues. I think what we need at Sea Ranch is to make better use of the members on our utilities committee. We have people with tremendous experience, and we need to look towards setting up a CEO, a separate CEO, if not an employee, at least in advisory capacity. It's okay. At least in advisory capacity, because I've never run a utility company, but there are plenty of our members who have, and we need to use their services.
I think you're absolutely right, Pat, that the water issues are some of the most important issues that we will face in the coming term. Are you doing that to me? There are two extraordinary issues that we're facing. One of them is the question of water rights, which has not simply to do with AB 2121, but certainly does have to do with that, and I believe that is an area that we have to continue to watch very closely. But the whole question of permitting or licensing our water company for the third well is also just a very, very important issue. We're working hard, and the board, I think, is fairly well apprised of what's going on here. And it's something that we do want to give a lot of attention to. My particular expertise comes into play when it comes to funding the capital improvement program. I mean, a $10 million project is sitting out there waiting to be done. We have finally gotten a start on it this year, and I'm very, very pleased to have been a part of that. Going into the future, the question is going to be how, not whether we want to complete that, but how to afford it, how to make it work without a huge expense to every one of us. And that is where my expertise is particularly useful. So the water rights issue, not just AB 2121, but the whole question of licensing, renewing, either gaining a license or renewing our permit, and then the question of how to fund the CIP. Thank you for the question.
Pat, can I ask you to restate your question?
Yeah, I wrote it down myself. What specific qualifications do you bring to the table to be able to address the issues that we currently face with the water company?
Well, my concern is that unless we're sure that we have a water supply, we're not going to have a water company. So one of the things that I believe is essential is that we, where I'm talking about staff, I'm not talking about water rights attorneys, develop a relationship with the staff of the State Water Board. That relationship, as far as I understand from my discussions with them, is not there. And we need to have a relationship so that if a policy or an issue or concern about the infrastructure of our water company is there, that we can call them up and we can ask them. They're not bad guys. And I worked with them for 25 years, and I think that if that relationship had been there, we may not have had the fear that happened a week or so ago when I received calls at 9 and 10 o'clock at night from elderly people wanting to know if they should sell their home because they were going to have to carry water. I felt that was really unfortunate. The other thing is, I really believe there has to be something in the water company, and I don't know if the community manager that we have will have the ability to do that, but sort of a professional management of the water company. That's not saying anything against the functioning of the water company. It's this relationship, this networking that has to be in place because we have to have assurances for our water. And so with my experience in dealing with the State Water Board and the regional boards, I believe that that will be a real asset to the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, volunteers?
Yeah, and my name is Peter Utes, 18102, and I have a question about the Community Services District or the potential for us to join such a thing. And basically, I guess I understand that there's some issues around finance that would perhaps be advantageous to be part of a CSD, but I'm interested in whether you feel there would be any impact on the management or the control or the governance of our water company, and what you feel the risks and the benefits relative to that governance is. And I'm addressing the question really to Donna because you brought it up with regard to the reforming the governance of the water company, but I'd like to also give Jody and Tim a chance to respond if they want.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter. I've talked to many people, many sea ranchers, and the formation of a CSD is of great concern to many people because it's an asset that we all own, and many people are afraid of giving that asset up. One of the reasons, or one of the problems, is the only people who could vote on whether or not we become a CSD are people who are registered to vote at Sea Ranch. And that leaves many of our members unable to vote on a different type of, forming a CSD. They would also, the same people who reside here would be those to vote on the board, to vote on a water board. So it's a very complex question, and it needs to be explored more. I don't have a definitive answer. I know we shouldn't continue the way we are. Randy does a great job in what he does, but I think the water situation is so complex that we need management also.
Okay, Jody, would you like to be next, and then Tim?
I won't repeat the points that Donna brought up relative to the fear of losing an asset and voting. I understand that there are some positive attributes to a CSD having to do with taxes. I have to be honest that I don't quite understand all of it on a CSD. It's a very complex issue. I think the board has been studying it for years and years, and I think it's something that we need to continue looking at. But beyond that, I have no further comment.
Tim?
Thank you, Peter, for the question. The question of the CSD has been, the board has been working on it now for more than a year. And it has to be divided into a couple of different segments. One is the change of governance itself and whether there are advantages and disadvantages to that. Another has to do with, in fact, the funding of the capital improvement plan. As a CSD, we would qualify for municipal borrowing, which of course is cheaper than traditional corporate borrowing. There are other ways, however, to arrive at that without having to completely change the structure of our governance. One of the examples, or one of the possibilities, I should say, is to form our own public utilities district. And as we look at these, it is an evolving process. There's more involved in what I've been trying to get the membership as well as the board to recognize as we've been moving through this, is that there's a lot more involved than just, even though it's very expensive, there's a lot more than just financing the CIP in this. And taxes are one of the issues. We can move away from the California PUC and the Public Utilities Commission. Now, that could be a bad thing and a good thing. I have been through the latest general rate increase with the California PUC, and I spent a lot of time sitting across the table from their engineers and so forth, and their questions are usually very positive. I guess I better sit down.
Why don't you tell us what a CIP is for those?
I'm sorry, the capital improvement program that I have talked about a couple of times. Thank you.
All right, volunteers, where's your next person?
Marty Campbell, Unit 17, Lot 15. I'd like to add my thanks to each of you for being willing to run for the board. It's a big commitment, and I appreciate your willingness to serve. I'd like to ask each of the candidates roughly how many board meetings and how many budget meetings you have attended, ever. Thank you.
Okay, why don't we start off this time with Jody, and then Donna, and then
I attended my first board meeting in 1995, and it was at the Annapolis School. Susan Clark was the chair, and I got up and spoke because I was upset about the lack of transparency. They did not want to release the draft budget. I would say, actually, my husband and I were actually talking about this. Between 20 and 30, I'm guessing, of board meetings and, a handful of finance committee meetings.
Okay, Donna?
Hi, Marty. I've probably attended 20 to 30 board meetings. However, I have never attended a budget meeting at Sea Ranch.
Okay, Kim?
All of them. We bought our property here in 2003. I have been in meetings where I think it was just Sandy Bush, the Davises, and I who were the only non-staff people in the audience. I think that it's very, very rare, if it's ever happened, that I've been to a meeting that the Davises have not been to. But since buying the property, I've been to essentially all of them.
Okay. Good, thank you. Next call, Peter, are you good to go?
This microphone, I don't think works, so I'll, or does it? It's all right.
Hold it close to your mouth.
I want to thank you all also for running. But I also might question your sanity. Donna characterized the Sea Ranch as being mismanaged, and also asked that a budget be formed from the top down. If the Sea Ranch is mismanaged, and if we have to form the budget from the top down, how do you create the budget without looking at the individual constituents and not using the staff? And if the staff is mismanaged, then how are they going to be capable of doing that? I'd like to ask all three of you to comment on that. Is the Sea Ranch mismanaged, and how are you going to arrive at this number that you're going to tell the staff? That's been tried in the last couple of budget cycles, and the board didn't do it, nor the finance committee accept that. So I'm still not sure how you go about doing that. Thank you. That's for everyone.
Am I the first to
Let's see. Yeah, it would be Donna, Donna, you're going to start, and Kim, and then
Well, Pete, one of the reasons I said that we're mismanaged is there has been a total lack of transparency. It's pretty appalling that the membership finds out that we've sued our attorney and we've had no notification from any community manager or board or anything. So I view that as mismanagement. I also believe that the outrageous legal fees that have been spent suing a member should have been approached a different way. A lot more involvement by the board and by an attorney who knows CID law, someone familiar with the Davis-Sterling Act. And regarding a new budget year, we have a new community manager. He was very effective in Telluride, in reforming their budgets and looking for efficient means of saving money. And I'm trusting that that will happen here too.
see, it's actually Tim. Tim.
Thank you, Peter. My position, quite honestly, is that the association is not mismanaged. I believe that our administration is just doing a tremendous job. I am sorry that we have gotten caught in some of the legal expenses. The question of suing our own attorney was the request of that attorney, just to get that all kind of out there. The association was never at any risk because we had sued our attorney at his request. It's just a question of how to get paid back for all of the attorney's fees that we are having to put into the question of the water licensing or permit. So the fact is, I think that every year the Finance Committee challenges the administration, the staff comes back and has worked very, very hard at keeping the fees and the assessments as low as possible. There are other ways it could be done, but the fact is, I believe in general, they would be detrimental to each of us in terms of costs.
Okay, Jody, you're up.
I don't believe that our staff are mismanaged. I think we have wonderful staff. As far as legal expenses, I believe that under normal circumstances, the community manager and our staff attorney would have an opportunity to review the work product and the associated costs with any legal fees, whether it be litigation or if it were having to do with water rights. But the problem is this last year, our attorney was taken up with dealing with a number of internal issues that went way beyond the amount of time that she is budgeted. Think about this. She gets 8.3 hours a week. That's not a lot when you're dealing with all of the legal issues that are before us. So I think that if we can free up some of her time and not have all of these internal hassles, maybe she would have the time to be able to review our legal fees and make sure that we stay on course. If that is not the case, then we are going to have to hire outside counsel, litigation staff, especially when it comes to litigation of our CC&Rs, to look at the various options that are before us and give a separate opinion as to where we might proceed and how much it would cost. But I think we need to allow our attorney, Carol, to do what she's been hired to do and give her the time in order to do it. Thank you.
Okay, all right, we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Doug Bloom, and I'm in 1956. My question is all three candidates, and number one, thank you for running and thank you for appearing today, appreciate that. And my question involves cost management, budgeting, and potentially headcount reduction or headcount redesignation. When I look at the most recent bulletin, I see that we're just about 80% of build out now, 78% to be precise. We're only doing about 7 homes under construction right now, which is only about 20% the normal total. We've been doing fewer homes for the last 2 or 3 years, and if you look at the national news, certainly the amount of new home construction is down dramatically, and is also here. No turnaround coming here soon, I think, or anywhere else. I guess my question is, the design group itself is, in my mind anyways, fairly heavily staffed. And if they're doing less projects, they're probably doing more compliance. As they've done more compliance, our legal costs have trended up till they're out, beyond reason, as we've discussed already here today. My question to all three candidates then is, what specific steps would you take to address this situation, and would you consider freezing headcount and possibly removing some of the headcount and hiring a very professional, full-time, experienced utility manager?
Okay, I think we're now going to start with Tim, Jody, and Don.
Well, there's, I don't know how the utility manager actually fits into your whole question about design. The design department, the design review group has in fact been cut way back. We have saved a significant amount of money by cutting back the hours and even days that the design committee meets. And we've done that in the face of the cutbacks in terms of building and building permits. So we've already moved along that line. That's not the only work that the design committee does, and it is all that they get paid for, however, from the permit process. We also use them for larger issues, landscape issues, and other issues that are going on the Sea Ranch on an ongoing basis. And we're able to start catching up on some of those now that we've been behind on for many years because we have a little bit of free time. Will that continue? I don't know. If it does, we will continue to curtail the hours that the design committee works. So far as hiring another manager for the utilities or the works group, I'm not at all convinced that that is necessary, Doug. I think that we will want a project manager for the capital improvement program. But already what you're talking about is expanding staff instead of contracting staff. So the question that we have to address is, at what point in the progress of the capital improvement program or plan do we need to bring in a project manager to start putting together the actual tank that we have? Oops, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, Tim, thank you.
Hi, Doug. During the last 4 years, the administrative staff has grown, while the boots on the ground that maintain this beautiful place have lost staff. So I don't know why we've become so top-heavy, but certainly that should be examined. And I'm hoping that our new community manager will take a look at that. I don't know why we need 2 directors in the department, the design department. We have 2 directors. I'm not sure why we are so top-heavy, but I would look to well, first of all, a freeze on hiring, and as people leave, perhaps rearrange the staff, like Mr. Randolph had done recently, so that we're utilizing our people. I know we have an excellent staff. And I do believe that there is a need for a specialist for our water department.
Jody?
Well, I believe we're properly staffed. I don't think we need more staff. And I thought I heard you, Doug, talk about the DCEM group. And it was one of the questions that I asked when I was collecting information and getting myself together for going out and having coffees and such. And it's my understanding that the DCEM, they're back to where they were 10 years ago. So they've even taken a 1-day furlough. And so, you know, I think we have the staff. I think we have to give our new community manager an opportunity to look at his system and do what his job is. And that is, he is supposed to implement the policies that are set out by the board and allow him to do his job. And I think we have an excellent guy that we've hired, and I want to give him a chance to do it, and I don't want to try and second guess it.
Okay, good. All right, we have another question ready to go.
Is this going to be okay? I'm Sandra Bush in Unit 28, Lot 32, down in the meadow. Is this any? Yeah. Sandra Bush, Unit 28, Lot 32, down in the meadow. For all of the candidates, we have wrestled with fire safety, with fuel management for years and years. We have a program in place, and I feel terribly for Donna and her history with fire. Nobody should go through that. My question to each of you is, how much, either in view restoration or in fire safety, are you going to propose to cut? Because I would rather see trees here than the way it was back in 1962. That's just my personal problem with overcutting. I think we're doing well, but I'd like your opinions of how much money you'd be willing to throw at it and how much you would remove from our landscape. Thank you.
Okay, let's start. Jody, Donna, Jim.
Sandy, that's a tough question. Amount of money, I can't give you an amount. But I do believe strongly that this is an ever-changing landscape that we live in. And I don't believe there is anything anymore as view restoration. We can enhance, we can make it better, and some of that can be through our fuel management program. But it can't be like it was before. Our environment has changed, and we always knew it was going to change. So I think we need to look at making it as good as it can be, but it's not going to be like it was before. That's just not going to happen.
All right, good. Good.
The board has a fiduciary responsibility to maintain property values. When people purchase a home with a view or a lot with a view, they pay dearly for the view. I don't believe that trees should block the view. I think anyone who wants to restore their view should do so. I believe that the design committee and the DCEM should help the members restore the view, because views cost money and boards are fiduciary. It's our fiduciary duty to maintain that. When you read the Lawrence Halprin booklet, he clearly said in 2003 that they never envisioned all the trees to actually take root at Sea Ranch. They thought maybe 10% would grow, but in fact virtually all of them have grown, and very little has been done to keep up with the growth rate. So we need to do more. I can't give you a budget, but I do know that we have members who are losing money because their view has been taken away.
Okay, Jim?
We are spending, $500,000 on fuel management now. The last time that I ran for the board, there was an outcry that we should be spending more than $1 million on fuel management. And since that time, there's been an outcry that we need to spend less money, period. And so, somewhere in between those two demands is where we really need to find our spot. I've always kind of felt that if I have one group yelling at me because I'm not doing enough and another group yelling at me because I'm doing too much, that maybe I'm in just about the right spot. So, the tree situation and the view situation are real. And I look out of our window and I see trees and I count them as part of the view. Other people look out their window and they see trees and they see it as an abomination. The design committee has, in the last couple of years, been taking requests for view restoration far more seriously. One community up by the airport got together and the entire community came to the design committee with a plan for helping to restore views for the entire group. And they went back and forth a couple of times, but eventually they got what they wanted. They were able to come to a compromise that was very, very useful. I think the design committee is trying to work on the problem. I would agree that in some cases, the trees can in fact cut property values. But I believe that at this point the design committee is recognizing that as well.
Okay, good. Could you stand please?
Kathy Gordon.
Kathy Gordon, Unit 35A 94. Following up on the tree situation, I noticed that, this is for Donna Karch. I noticed that you had 27 years on your board. My goodness, you must have started when you were 12 years old. And that you were there during the 1981 firestorm. 91. I'd like to ask you what kind of planning your board did prior to that storm to meet the problems.
Thank you, Kathy. Our neighborhood, our 28 homes, and those nearby us were very well maintained. We had our clearance. At that time, it was a 30-foot clearance or to the property line. All of our properties were in compliance. However, we backed up to land owned by PG&E and East Bay Mud, the water utility district. Their properties were a thick forest. Every year we went the rounds with them. Please bring the goats. Please bring the chainsaws. Did they? No. And so it was beyond our control. One of the reasons the fire spread so quickly was that there were eucalyptus trees. And eucalyptus trees have roots that can spread to a mile, and the fire went underground and would explode, and that caused people's water tanks, any gas appliance, to explode. Our whole area was taken in 30 minutes. Does that answer you, Kathy, or would you? Yes?
Okay, thank you. Volunteers, who's ready to go? Okay.
Hi, Norm Wolkin, 3846. Many of you have mentioned the escalating legal fees. What, if you were elected or re-elected to the board, would your desired outcome be for the litigation against a fellow member? It's our money, it's your money. What kind of return do you expect from that investment?
Okay, now let's see. What do we lead on with Jody, I think.
Okay.
Jody, then Donna, and Tim.
That is a really difficult question, Norm. My hopes to not get into the specifics of the litigation, which would be inappropriate, because I don't want to prejudge a situation. But my hopes would be that we could still reach some sort of mutual settlement agreement where we get a little bit of what we want and the other party gets what they want. The one thing I can say is that it's my understanding that the approach to CCNR violations has changed since this was initiated. For instance, there is now more of a process in place, a checklist with photographs that are taken and all of that. There's been a learning process that's gone forward. In addition, it's my understanding that that if you live in a sensitive area, perhaps down in the bluffs, and you want to do trimming, that the association will, when you put in your plan, that they will actually, in agreement with you, come out and do that trimming, or they will provide a supervisor for whoever you're going to have the trimming, and that perhaps that will preclude future situations like we have in the current litigation. So maybe we learned something from it.
Okay, now, Norm, were we answering the question you asked?
Well, no,
exactly. I think that was a nice reply. I think what I was asking was, what is the desired outcome? You make an investment, you have in mind some sort of return. So what would be your approach faced with this litigation? It's real, it's alive. What do you want from it?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I don't know if I would be involved in the litigation. And I would hope that what I would want from it in the end is, you know, maybe I'm not answering your question. Maybe I'm not hearing it. But to learn from it, certainly, and maybe not go that way again. And from the actual case that's going forward, it would seem that we would want to come out even, but I don't think that's going to happen. Norm, I'm sorry, I'm not able to answer your question, I guess. Who's next?
Donna.
Hi, Norm. Had I been on the board when the discussion of whether or not to sue this member had occurred, I would have voted no. I've seen the application. I've seen some of the documents. The member, the Sea Ranch member, hired an arborist. There's a 40-page document of which branches and so forth could be trimmed and touched and so forth. He was given approval by our association. The association is supposed to go back within a certain amount of time. I don't know if it's 6 weeks or something. It's a brief time after the work is completed and sign off. This time, the DCEM took 15 or 16 months, and then they were surprised with what they saw. I don't think Sea Ranch stands a chance of winning this unfortunate lawsuit. I think it would be great if it could be settled, but that's wishful thinking probably on my part.
Okay, Tim?
Norm, I have been involved in this litigation now for several years, and I've heard a lot of things on both sides, and I've heard a lot of action plans, some of which I can't talk about because they are in fact confidential. What I would hope for, my goal in this or any litigation like it, would be to uphold our restrictions, what we commonly call the CC&Rs, to demand that members take seriously what the restrictions have to say about these kinds of things. Now, in this particular litigation, have mistakes been made? Possibly. Have opportunities been missed to try to get the thing settled and taken care of? Absolutely not. There hasn't been one opportunity to get the thing taken care of that has been missed. So the goal would be to have as low a cost from this point forward as we could possibly have in legal expenses, and come to some kind of an agreement that would, one, still continue to uphold our restrictions, but two, allow some kind of a conclusion here. It's a real tough one. We've been working with violations of our restrictions for many, many, many years, and only twice have we come into a problem that would be like this. And I would like to see it come to an end. That's my goal at this point.
Okay. Tough question. All right. Next.
Don Linden, 741. I just wanted to speak a little bit to several of the comments. And I preface this by saying at the moment I'm chair of the Landscape Task Force, which is in fact looking at how to deal with the commons and what kinds of issues need to come up in the appropriate management of the commons. And that is, I think, the most important part of our heritage here and of what we collectively own, is the way in which the commons affects us, the experience of it, the hazards of it, the things which it allows other people to do, and it is important that we figure that out, and we're in the act of trying to make some recommendations about that. I'm troubled by the fact that there is constantly, or has been several references here to the fact of suing one of our own members, as though somehow that was our initiation, which this may have been, but the initiation was a misunderstanding of what was a valuable way of creating, I presume. I don't know anything about the case, but there's constantly a reference to the interests of individuals and of individual views, when it is that the primary understanding of this place is a group of people living in combination with the landscape and with the managed landscape. And I think that has to be the priority.
So that's a comment. Thank you. Thank you.
But may I extend my question? Sorry, the question was, what would, I beg your pardon?
Get the microphone here.
I do beg your pardon. The question was, in what ways would each of the board members work to increase a sense of people caring for and being a part of and responding effectively to the condition we have here and the restrictions and covenants that we have to work together.
Okay, so there's a question. Do you understand the question? Donald, I think you gotta get it down to one sentence here. What is your question? Or you want to leave us moved by your comments?
Question is, what would each of the board members do to have all of us better understand what our responsibilities are to creating and maintaining and helping individually what our actions would be to help create and maintain this wonderful place we have? What would you do to increase the capacity for people to understand their positive role?
Okay, that's good. All right. I think we're now where we can go. Tim, Jody, and Donna.
I very positively, I was very affirmatively active in Dibby Tyler's resolution for a commons task force, landscape task force, or whatever we call it. I think it even has an acronym that I can't pronounce either.
It's just the LTF, the Landscape Task Force.
Okay, the Landscape Task Force, thank you. I think that this is a very positive step in going into the microeconomies of various neighborhoods and helping those people to work together to understand what the mission and goal of the Sea Ranch vision really is. I mean, we talk about living lightly on the land, and we even laugh about it because at one point it was just a sales slogan trying to market more properties. But the fact of the matter is, I believe every one of us in this room, and I include myself, believes in that as a philosophy. Now, how do we work together is what I heard Donald's question to be. And the way that we work together are through things such as this task force that's trying to pull the communities out and get them to understand what the vision is in those neighborhoods. That's one way we can help.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I sit on that task force and welcome anyone to come and sit and listen to what we do. And the other thing, I think to get the vision would be attend Larry Halpern's celebration on July the 3rd and get a real sense of what we're all about.
Okay, good comment.
And I would recommend reading the CEP and taking the advice for maintaining Sea Ranch and also going back to our CCNRs.
Okay, good. All right, next.
Linda Klein, 1332. Tim, you mentioned working together. This next election, I'd like to ask all three of you this question. 2 directors will be chosen in this election. If you are elected, which of the other 2 candidates would you most likely to be seen with, and why?
Now, wait a second. Let's repeat that exactly how you, we want to stay issue oriented here. Now, just tell me what you're trying to accomplish.
I think it's been a rather large issue that our board has had a difficult time working together in the last year. It's been very upsetting to me and a lot of members of the community. And I truthfully would like to know which members you would, which other director candidates you would most prefer to work with.
I think we're gonna, you know what? I'm gonna defer that question to the reception, and you can take it up in small groups. And okay, next.
Harlan Howe, 41871 Leeward, I don't remember my lot number. But really, 2 questions. One is I believe that we had a part in the initiation of the lawsuit, contrary, I guess, to what some people believe. And the first question is just directly, if the resolution came before the board to drop the lawsuit, would you vote yes or no?
Okay. You said 2 questions, but that sounded like one. Let's just leave it at that.
The second one is I've heard Larry Halpern speak on more than one occasion, and I've heard Donna's views, and I get the lady's name in the middle. I've heard your views, and in hearing him speak, they were much closer to Donna, and so I'd like for you to address whether you believe that what he believed was that there should be view to corridors and that sort of stuff back in the 60s or 70s, or if you believe it should be ongoing and allowed to grow.
Okay, these are so separate questions. Let's go. We'll do the first one. How would you vote if the question comes up to drop the current lawsuit? All right, so let's start. This will be Jody, Donna, and Tim.
If a resolution came before the board to drop the lawsuit, it would depend on the wording of the resolution. It would depend on the conditions. It would depend on what the agreement was. I mean, there could be 3 resolutions that come up for to drop the lawsuit, and each one have different conditions. So it would depend upon the resolution.
Okay, okay. All right.
That is a very difficult question. If I were that homeowner who had that permit, that did the permitted work, and 15 or 16 months later, I was hit with a lawsuit, I think I would behave the same way. And so if I were on that board and we could just settle it, I'd be thrilled to do so.
Okay.
I'm the middle person here.
I don't think that there's a single person on even the current board who wouldn't settle if we could. The fact is we just can't. There are a lot of issues involved, and again, many of them are only expressed and discussed in executive session. So I really don't want to bring it out and lengthen the discussion here. But the fact of the matter is, there isn't just one lawsuit. There's a lawsuit, there's a countersuit, there's a lawsuit, there's all kinds of things going on. And I think the board would be absolutely unanimous if there was a good way to settle and not simply cave in on restrictions violations. If we could come to some form of a settlement, the board has tried and tried and tried to do this. And so even on the current board, there's nobody who wouldn't be delighted to do that.
Could I just ask a follow-up question?
Okay, well, go ahead, I'll let.
Well, I guess my question is you probably don't want to set a precedent, but I can't imagine any person sitting in this room that has any sanity that would even consider violating the CCNRs to the degree that somehow you perceive that you did, even with permits and stuff. So, back to Norm's question, I mean, what do you possibly hope to gain? You've already made the point that the CCNRs are serious, so why not have no gain and stop the losses, I guess is my question.
You know, I think we've kind of covered this topic, and we're not the power decision makers here. I think we should move to some broader areas right now. So why don't we move to another area? Okay.
Judy Hardy, I have to think about this. 35A11, there have been several very contentious issues in the past year for the board to deal with. And they've not always done it in a very mature or respectful way. Coming into the board this next year, what qualities would you bring in order to see that this is improved? Thanks.
Okay, let's see. Our last would be Donna starting off this time. And Donna, and Tim, and Jody.
Patience and knowledge of the Davis-Sterling Act, as well as knowledge of our own CCNRs.
We drew numbers out of a hat for seating, as well as for the opening and closing statements. So Jody just kind of got stuck with this job of passing this microphone back and forth. Oh dear, now I've lost the question. Judy, oh yes, okay. How to deal with contention. What I bring to a second term on the board is a sense of ethical governance. And I think that that is the single thing that can draw us together better than anything else. We have to all be willing to say that we will work together using the same rules. I have a very strong sense of ethics, and that's my strength in this consideration.
Okay, Jody.
Well, there's no recipe to make it work on the board. Every situation is going to be unique, and everybody comes to the board with their own set of values, their own egos, their own personalities, and their own life experiences. One has to try and keep focused on the issues and stay away from the personalities. You have to acknowledge the legitimacy of other people's opinions. And it's okay to have different views. I mean, that's why we elect different people. We elect them because of their certain style, their different approaches to things. And what you have to do is try and find common ground and to move forward in a good faith effort.
Okay, good. We're going to go about 5 more minutes, and then we're going to start the closing statements. So let's keep track of that. Now, who's Whose turn is it?
Rich Perry hasn't asked a question.
Okay, Rich, let's go with Rich and then we'll back to Doug. Okay, Rich.
Rich Perry's 6-8 Compass Close. This is a question for Tim Gallagher. Tim, you have spent a lot of time, great deal of time, analyzing how to best finance the improvements we're going to need in our water system. Is it clear in your mind that what is the best vehicle financially for us to do that, and in fact is a CSD the best approach financially for us to take in your mind?
The CSD is one of the approaches, and it certainly is something that we want to continue to consider. As I mentioned earlier, Rich, there are other options that will get us to a municipal style of borrowing. There are options that might improve our chances or opportunities to be able to realize a loan. It's probably not a grant, but a loan from the state revolving fund. And these all need to be looked at. We also need to be creative. I hate the term look outside the box, but that's kind of where we are. We need to be creative. We need to ask ourselves questions of whether or not individual members might want to invest in the water company for some kind of a stated return that would be lower than the 8 or 9% that we'd have to be offering for corporate financing. We have to ask ourselves questions of how long we want to be able to make these payments, and what are all of the different thoughts and objects or ways that we could accomplish this. We are right now financing the meters because we were able to get some retroactive money from the California, out of our general rate increase from the California Public Utilities Commission. And we're using that right now for taking care of the meters and for paying back a loan to the association. We've got to keep thinking creatively, Rich, and working on it. I don't think that at this point we can say that this is the right answer or the wrong answer.
Okay. So let's try to...
Jackie Boss, lot 34A72.
Excuse me just a second. Looks like we have 3 questions remaining. Do you have a question, right? All right, so we'll see if we can get these 3.
Okay, I'll try to keep this one focused. Okay, focus. So my question's for Donna. I think keeping the budget down is key, and key to that, of course, is our wonderful volunteers. I think almost everybody in this room serves as a volunteer here at the Sea Ranch in one way or another. And looking at your candidate statement and what you said, I didn't hear you mention your track record as a volunteer at the Sea Ranch on committees or in other ways. So if you could detail that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. My husband and I have come to Sea Ranch to rest and to relax, to recharge our batteries before going back to work. And until about a year ago, I thought everything was just fine here. But then I learned that paradise was in perils, and I discovered the lawsuit, and that just changed my way of thinking. And so although I have not served officially on any committee, I have notified the members of the lawsuit, of our water problems. I've notified, through my husband, the necessity of AEDs. Now we have AEDs in all of our facilities, and at least one person has been saved by them. I've also informed the board of two requirements of the Davis Sterling, which were not known by the association. So although I have not officially served on a committee, I have contributed.
Okay, good. All right. She's good to go. Okay, Doug?
Yeah, Doug Blum again. This is a question directed primarily at Tim, because he was on the board at the time. And Tim, I'm just making comments from your first statement where you kind of bestowed upon your duties as treasurer for the board and treasurer for the water company in your discussion with regard to transparency. I would like to know, make it transparent in a sense, when the original lawsuit was proposed to the board for Member Hill, how did you vote? And also, if it were to be looked at again today, how would you vote? And the third part of my question is, I have concerns on legal fees, and I know that we've spent upwards of over $100,000 for a water attorney in Sacramento, but I'm not sure what results we've gotten back from that, because it seems to me there are water issues that are up in the air at this point.
The vote about the litigation was taken in executive session. And if there were another vote, that one would be taken in executive session too. Now, that doesn't seem very transparent, but if I were dealing with your property and there were a concern, the fact is that's where it would be dealt with, is in executive session. When I speak of transparency, what I'm talking about is we need to do everything that we possibly can in open session. Debbie Tyler has been the biggest champion of this that I've seen in my years on board. We are constantly trying to push things out of executive session that can go out. But the votes on these situations are in executive session and they need to remain there. Now, regarding the legal fees on the water company issue, that too, unfortunately, is largely handled because it's contracts and so forth within executive session. But I will say that I'm very pleased with the work that Martha Lenahan has done with and for us. She is very active and I don't think has been ever considered to be a drain in terms of her legal fees, the way that we have considered some other attorneys. Our attorney has very aggressively taken on the attorneys that have been representing us in the matter of the restrictions violation. And they have changed the way that they are working. One of them has been taken off of the case entirely, and the other one has been having to make, or had to make, a trip up to talk to all of us without being able to charge us for doing that. The Lenahan work has been very valuable and is very cost effective.
Okay, thank you. All right, our final question.
Are we on? Hey, we're working. Bob Davis, oops, let me slow down. Bob Davis, Unit 13-1. Each of you have strengths that you bring to this board, or to be on the board. I'd like to ask each of you, give me a self-described weakness that you have, and what you are doing or what you would do to turn that into a strength. Thank you.
You have a 2-minute limit. All right, we can run through that. That's a fair question. Okay, just tell them your areas where you want to build your strength. And let's see, I need to say. Let's see. This actually should start, I think, with Jody, and then Donna, and then Tim.
Always the good question to ask the candidates. My weakness is that I always go into a situation making the assumption that people want to solve the problem. And I have found that sometimes people love having the problem and having the podium of that problem. So what have I done about it? Well, I recognize it. And so when I'm dealing with people that have difference of opinion, I try to always remember that no matter how hard I try to solve the problem, one of them may not want the problem solved. And so I don't beat myself up over it.
Okay. All right. All right, Donna?
Well, my weakness in life are cats. And they manage to manipulate me and our household. But I have to agree with Jody that it's people. It's working with people and truly going in an optimistic manner and hoping to resolve a conflict, because I do like working with people. And I expect that they also want to resolve a conflict. And it's always a disappointment when that does not happen. After 1991, when we lost our home in the fire, and all the neighbors lost their homes, we had two families that decided to buy in Rossmore rather than rebuild. And developers came in and purchased the two lots. And they boldly said, oh, well, your CC&Rs don't apply to me. We're building anything we want. Well, the homes on the east side of the house were limited to a single level. The homes on the east side were a two-story, so that the views were maintained. In two instances, these developers decided they were going to pull permits, start construction, and build a two-story home. We managed to work together as a board. We got the city to issue a stop work order on both projects. The contractors lost. We ended up in mitigation and arbitration, and our homeowners association did win. And new people bought the lots. We're delighted to work with the CC&Rs, and we have a very happy neighborhood.
Okay, Tim? Building points.
My beloved spousal unit doesn't like for me to use this example, but the real difference between a married man and a bachelor is that the bachelor just doesn't know his faults. The fact is, walking into a board meeting and assuming that somebody who has typically not supported, maybe any of your ideas or projects, makes it very difficult to assume that you can actually change that person's mind. But minds do change. Mine certainly has at times. I have walked into board meetings thinking that I knew exactly where I was going to go in one particular item or another. And I've listened, and other board members have changed my mind. Roy and I have both had this experience. So I think I've already learned that I can be surprised by the thoughtfulness of other board members. And I'm very happy for that. Speaking of spousal units, Dr. Karch, Steve Karch is here. Why don't you stand up so that when we go off to our other meeting, I've got another 20 seconds. See, so when we go off to our reception, people will know who you are. Tom, I saw you here somewhere, Tom Sparks. Stand up and wave so that people will know you when we go into the reception. And my beautiful spouse, Margie, I think is still here. No, she won't stand up.
Okay, time to wrap up.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for some good questions. Now, final statements. We're running a little bit late, but I think it's all going to work fine. Our closing statements, they have up to 5 minutes. Our lead off is Jody Sparks, followed by Tim, followed by Donna.
How do we do this, There's an old saying that says, tell them what you tell them again, and then tell them what you told them. And so, so today I told you something about me. I told you what I did successfully for 25 years. I've described to you how I believe I can be an asset to the board and help us move forward and not linger in the past or what happened before. I believe I have a good relationship with all of the current board members. And I believe that we need to always keep in mind that the board is elected to set policy and provide guidance to the community manager to follow in managing the Sea Ranch and the water company. I'm committed to work cooperatively with the other board members, our great staff that we have, and all of the members, and try and develop consensus. I want us to feel good about our board, and I want us to feel good about where we live and all of our other members. I look forward to your support. Thank you.
I have to wrestle this back in. As I mentioned in my opening statement, the water company is absolutely the most critical concern going into the next term on the board. A primary issue involves the questions around water rights and perfecting a license or a renewed permit. Even though it seems that Assembly Bill 2121 will not have a major impact on our application for a license, we must continue to be very vigilant in this regard. At the same time, we know that the completion of the capital improvement plan is absolutely necessary, and we know that it will be very expensive. Our board has been working very closely with our well-qualified staff and expert volunteers on both the Utilities Committee and the Finance Committee. What has the board accomplished up to this time? We hired a consulting firm to suggest solutions. These suggestions have been vetted by water company staff and the Utilities Committee. This combined effort became the basis for the capital improvement plan, which includes the construction of a new, very large water tank and infrastructure changes in the water delivery system. I have taken on the responsibility of financing this capital improvement plan, and we've made a successful application for a water rate increase through the California Public Utilities Commission to support the necessary construction. We have applied for and received from the CPUC a letter authorizing us to borrow the funds necessary for this project. We are beginning the CIP work with a project that can be completed quickly. This not only makes it possible to start saving money by using the electronic meters, it allows us to add the meters to the water company infrastructure, and this will help us raise more money, which will help offset future financing expense as we tackle the larger projects. We have to fix the water company and make up for years of deferred maintenance, not just to meet state regulations, but to have a safe and reliable water supply, both for general use and for firefighting. I want to continue in my role as treasurer and make sure that the water company improvements are financed and implemented successfully and as inexpensively as possible. What I offer that is completely distinct from other honorable candidates, either of which Linda I'd be happy to serve with, is much needed continuity and the skills and background in finance necessary to complete the water company's capital improvement plan. Based on these qualifications, I ask that you consider voting for me when you receive your ballots. Should you choose to place me on the board for another term, I will be honored to serve you to the best of my ability. Thank you all for taking the time to come to this meeting and hear what distinguishes each of us as candidates for your board of directors.
If you want intelligent decisions made about the water company and to reform the governance and management of this most essential facility, then I am the one you want. If you want Sea Ranch to do better, truly uphold our CC&Rs and bring our budget under control, then I am the one you want. If you want us to resolve disputes and protect ourselves without handing over big blank checks to unmanaged lawyers, then I'm the one you want. If you want to do something really effective about fire safety, view restoration, and design committee problems, then I am the one you want. If you want to embrace our original values of living simply, in harmony with our natural wonders, and good stewardship of the land and each other, then I am the one you want. And I want you. I want you to give me the benefit of your experience and opinions so that your viewpoints can inform my positions. My purpose is to work for consensus, doing what is best for the Sea Ranch. I'm asking for your votes so that I can win a seat on the board. Then I can be working for you and looking out for your best interests and finding solutions that are good for the Sea Ranch.
Okay, very good. I would like to very much thank the Forum Committee for putting on a fine setup here for us today, and I'd like